The first thing Leo noticed was the silence, not the kind of silence that comes with calm, but the strange, thick silence of a medical bay, where machines hum under their breath and lights glow without flicker. His head felt heavy, not with pain, but with a strange sense of weight, like his thoughts had been moved around and put back in the wrong order. He blinked, slowly trying to focus as pale lights shaped the corners of the curved ceiling above him. He sat up slowly. The sheets beneath him felt too clean and too smooth, like they belonged to a place far more advanced than any Earth hospital. He remembered a mission. He remembered boarding a small shuttle from the orbital transfer port. He remembered setting coordinates toward unregistered anomaly near the outer belt, and then nothing, just darkness, followed by this bright room with its quiet, cold air. Before he could say anything, the doors to the room slid open without sound and she entered. She was tall, more than tall, and her presence seemed to bend the room around her. Her skin was smooth like metal, yet moved like flesh. A silver tone ran through her from head to toe, except for veins of glowing light that pulsed softly along her neck and arms. Her eyes were sharp, but not cruel, with a soft violet light in the center that seemed to look through him rather than at him. She walked forward slowly, her steps silent, but her voice clear and gentle. "You are awake finally." I was worried. Leo stared at her, unable to speak for a moment. His mouth opened, then closed again, then opened. "Do I know you?" She tilted her head as if the question confused her, then smiled with a calmness that made his heart beat faster. "Yes, you do, or rather, you did, but the damage must have been worse than I expected. You may not remember me yet, but we are bonded." Leo blinked again, this time frowning. "Bonded? What do you mean, bonded?" She stepped closer and sat beside the medical table, though she barely seemed to touch it, her movements too precise, too graceful. Her voice remained level, full of some strange warmth. "You are my mate. We underwent the ceremony 6 lunar cycles ago during the mission under Project Mirrorbond. We shared neural space. We linked minds and hearts. You asked me to marry you under your customs. I accepted under mine." Leo felt the room shift slightly, not in motion, but in weight, like her words pushed down on everything. "No, that can't be true. I would remember something like that. Someone like you. I've never even seen your species before, let alone been inside your mind or whatever this Mirrorbond is." She reached out and placed her hand over his. Hers was smooth and cool, not cold, just different, and there was a flicker, not in his vision, but somewhere deep inside, like a thread had just been pulled, and a hidden curtain twitched in the wind. "You will remember in time I saved what I could. Your consciousness was fractured during the attack, and the vessel exploded. Before I could extract your full memory, I was forced to rebuild your neural pathways with my technology. It was risky, but the only way to preserve what was left of you. I had to bring you back, even if you would not remember me at first." Leo pulled his hand back and stood up, unsteady but defiant. His instincts screamed for caution, but something softer inside whispered something else, not fear, not even confusion, something warmer. "You're telling me I died or nearly died, and you rebuilt me?" Why, she stood as well, her tone quiet but resolute. "Because I love you, because I made a vow, and because I could not lose you again." Leo stepped back again, rubbing his temples. There was a flicker, this time a sharp one, an image of stars through a tinted dome. A hand reaching for his, a laugh, not his own, but deeply familiar. Then it was gone. "You say we shared a mind, but I have no memory of that, and Earth Command has never told me anything about your kind or any mission named Mirrorbond. If I was part of it, why is there no record?" She nodded slowly, as if she expected the resistance. "They erased it from your systems. Your command did not want peace, not truly, not if it meant equality. Project Mirrorbond was hidden, shut down, and buried, because it was proof that your people could bond with mine, not just communicate, not just coexist, but become something new." Leo's eyes narrowed. "That sounds like a story, not a fact. If what you're saying is true, where's the proof?" She turned and with a single motion projected a field of light in the air beside them. Images began to flow rapidly, flickers of a shared cabin on a quiet moon, small pieces of time A cup handed from one to the other, a dance in silence under alien stars, a conversation. With no sound but full of meaning, and static. Then fire, then silence. Leo stared at the fragments. They felt like dreams. He could almost remember, or wanted to almost too clearly. He could feel a familiar ache in his chest, and didn't know. Why? What happened to us? She answered without pause. They attacked the base, not my people, nor yours, but a third faction, one that fears what we represent. We barely escaped. I lost you in the blast. I carried your core, and kept your signal alive by connecting it to mine. Even if I was hunted for it, I had to bring you back. Leo felt the room spin for just a second before he steadied himself. This was too much. It felt unreal, like a fantasy. His own memories were a fog, and yet her words fit into that fog like puzzle pieces. Before he could ask more, alarms flashed across the upper wall of the medical bay, and red light bathed the room in warning tones. The air changed slightly. Pressure shifted. Her eyes narrowed, and the glow inside her arms pulsed brighter. They have found us. Leo turned to her. She didn't answer. Instead, her arms split at the wrist to form a small weapon he had never seen before, glowing with both heat and control. She stepped toward the door, scanning the corridor. They will try to take you again, or destroy you if they cannot. Either way, we run together, or fall apart. Choose now. Leo looked at the door, then at her, then at the fading lights of the memory field, still flickering with images of another life. He might have lived. The pulse in his chest echoed louder than the sirens outside. He didn't know her. He didn't know this place. He didn't even know what was real anymore. But something deep inside already knew his answer, and he chose the corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit by red warning lights and the soft blue glow of control panels that lined the walls. Overhead vents exhaled steady breaths of recycled air, and distant mechanical clicks echoed like quiet footsteps following from behind. Leo kept pace with the cyborg woman, his mind caught between disbelief and something deeper, something stirring beneath the surface of his thoughts, something he could not name, but could feel like the touch of a dream. Half remembered, her weapon retracted into her arm, leaving no trace, and her movements remained silent, as if she belonged to this place, or perhaps as if she did not belong anywhere at all. She walked with the confidence of someone who had made this journey before, more than once, maybe more than 100 times. Leo followed her without asking where they were going, because deep down some part of him trusted her, even if his mind still refused to believe her. They turned sharply into a chamber that looked like a cross between a control center and a living room. Strange glowing vines pulsed along the ceiling, and semi-transparent displays hovered mid-air, unreadable to Leo, but shifting with constant updates. She gestured toward the center console and spoke without looking at him. This place is shielded for a short time. They won't find us here. Leo stopped near the console, glancing around at the floating symbols and scrolling data. Nothing made sense to him, yet it all felt oddly familiar, like the interface of a forgotten childhood game. You said they're after me. Who are they? Why would anyone go to this length just to stop a broken memory project? She finally turned to him, her violet eyes dimmed slightly, her voice low but still calm. Because you were the only one who completed the bond. Because what we became is something they fear. They do not want connection. They want control, and you are now something they cannot predict. Leo looked down at his hands. They felt human, warm, strong, calloused, like he remembered, but the tremble inside them was new. He spoke slowly, as if trying to hear his own words. You are telling me I am some kind of hybrid now? She nodded and reached to the console. Her touch brought up another projection, this time clearer than before in the display. Leo saw himself, or rather a version of himself, dressed in a sleek gray uniform, standing beside her in a ceremony that looked both human and alien, a crystal core placed between their hands, then a flash of light. Not symbolic but technological. Something had transferred between them, a spark that grew into a web of light connecting minds. Your neural code adapted faster than anyone expected. The bond was not just emotional, it became functional. We could think together, act together, see through each other's eyes. The success of that frightened Those in power on both sides, they saw a future where borders didn't matter, where thought was shared and trust replaced fear. Leo tried to process it all. The image faded, but the feeling remained. He didn't remember the ceremony, but the sight of it left a weight in his chest. And what about now? Do I still have that connection? Not fully, she said, her voice softer. The damage broke the neural path, but fragments remain. That is why your thoughts echo mine. That is why you feel things you cannot explain. Leo stepped back and leaned against the wall, his head throbbing, not from pain, but from the effort of holding so many new truths at once. I thought I was just a mission tech. I signed up to check anomalies and clean debris, not to become part of some galactic experiment. You volunteered, she replied. You saw what it could mean for both species. You were the first to believe that unity was worth the risk. That doesn't sound like mesh. Tilted her head again, not in confusion, but with something like amusement. Changed not just your mind, but your heart. You saw the future we could build together. That was why you chose to bond with me, not out of duty, but out of something stronger. Leo looked up at her again, studying her face. Her features were symmetrical and strange, yet something in her expression felt real, not mechanical, not alien, something close to human. Do you still believe in that future? She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze dropped slightly, and her voice dropped even lower. I believed in you, and I still do. The silence between them stretched, not empty, but heavy with the things he could not remember, and the things she would not force him to feel before he could speak again. The screen to their right flared with a sudden shift. Lines of data scrambled, and a dark symbol peered across the display. He couldn't read it, but instinct told him it was a warning. They found us. Her hands moved quickly across the panel, initiating a cascade of sequences. Leo couldn't follow. We have only one choice now. What choice? She turned to him fully now, her expression unreadable. To run or to confront your past. The data core of Mirrorbond still exists, hidden in the restricted zone of Earth's old deep net system, but it's protected by layers of firewalls, both digital and political. If we reach it, we can prove the truth, but we will be hunted every moment. Until then, Leo hesitated. He wanted to say no. He wanted to say this wasn't his fight, that he didn't remember her, or this life, or any of what she claimed. And yet when she looked at him, it didn't feel like she was looking at a stranger. Where is the data core? She pointed to a star chart that appeared beside her. It glowed with a quiet hum, showing a dark sector of abandoned Earth relay stations, old satellites floating in decay, forgotten by time. There, she said. Leo sighed deeply and gave her a tired look. So we break into a dead relay and try to recover something that's been buried and erased. Yes, she said, with a faint smile and hope in her voice. Sounds like something I would have done before all this. You did, she answered. They moved quickly from the chamber and into the docking bay, where a small vessel waited its surface. Sleek with hybrid technology, half human, half alien, the fusion of both worlds. Just like the two who now entered it together as the ship lifted silently from the ground. Leo looked back once more at the hallway behind them, not in fear, but with the feeling that part of him had already started to remember, not through memory, but through instinct, through emotion, and maybe, just maybe, through trust. Didn't know what they would find out there, or what would be left of the truth, but he knew one thing with certainty now. He was not running from the past anymore. He was flying toward it. The vessel moved through space like a shadow, gliding between beams of broken light, far from the regular paths of transport ships and commerce lanes. Its smooth hull shimmered faintly with adaptive camouflage, mimicking the endless stars around it. Inside the cockpit, Leo sat in silence, eyes fixed on the approaching wreckage field of Earth's old relay stations, once used for deep space transmission, now drifting in neglect and decay, like memories no one wanted to face anymore. Across from him, she remained still, her posture calm, but not relaxed. Her eyes never blinked, only shifted slightly as she scanned the system's data, kept flashing across her interface, and still she said nothing. Leo had asked no more questions. Either the answers had already begun building themselves inside his mind like bricks rising from fog into the shape of something real. He looked at her finally, his voice steady but quieter than before's. How much of me is still mesh? Turned slowly and answered without hesitation, more than you think. Your body is yours, your mind is yours. The link we shared did not replace your thoughts, it only allowed them to meet mine, to grow together. When the bond fractured, what remained was not a machine. It was still you, just touched by something more. Leo leaned back and closed his eyes. Only for a moment, strange sensations had started creeping into his awareness, things he could not explain, smells, sounds, textures of memories that should not exist, like the taste of a fruit he had never eaten, or the song of a wind he had never walked through. He saw places in dreams, now spirals of stone, deep oceans of silver, twin suns setting over fields of crystal grass, and her standing beside him, always just out of reach. He opened his eyes and stared at the ruins ahead, scattered towers of twisted metal, each one once a hub of information, each one now silent and cold. You said the data core is still active inside that. She nodded gently. Its core is buried beneath the central relay station. Its protective systems remain intact. No AI has touched it since the shutdown. Only a neural signature that matches its encryption can open it. That signature is yours. Leo stood and moved toward the ship's rear, where a storage locker opened automatically, revealing a suit light and flexible, designed for deep vacuum exposure. He began putting it on without a word, hands moving with a focus that surprised even him. "Ved done this before," she said, watching him without blinking. He paused only for a breath. "I guess I have." They exited the vessel together, drifting with silent propulsion through floating debris, fragments of metal and glass, and lost transmissions. A forgotten graveyard of human invention, twisted remains of what once carried voices across galaxies, now nothing but floating silence. Leo landed first on the platform surface, boots connecting with a magnetic hum. He looked around. The station was lifeless, its panels faded, its edges cracked by time and radiation. She landed beside him, pointing toward a narrow hatch barely visible under a pile of collapsed plating. Together, they cleared the debris and entered, crawling through a shaft lined with frozen circuits and inert cables. The corridor led to a room hidden in the core, surrounded by walls of black alloy that pulsed faintly with a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. "This is it," she said softly. Leo stepped forward. The door scanned his presence, then flickered with low light symbols across its surface. A moment later, the panel slid open, revealing a chamber full of light and noise, not broken, but preserved, perfectly sealed in time. Dozens of memory strands hung in the air, like floating threads. Made of light, they pulsed gently, waiting for command. He reached out slowly, without knowing why, and the system responded. Instantly, lights danced between his fingers, scanning him, accepting him, welcoming him. "Back, access granted," said a voice, not his own, not hers either, just a voice stored deep in the system, waiting for him. Strands shifted, merging into a single stream that poured forward into his vision, and what he saw changed everything. He saw himself inside a lab with walls made of both human steel and alien glass. He saw meetings between officials, secret discussions between two species desperate to avoid war. He saw himself volunteering for Project Mirrorbond, not for fame or reward, but because he believed in what it could mean. He saw her standing beside him, not a stranger, not a mystery, but his partner in purpose, and slowly in something deeper. He watched the bond process unfold, memory merging, emotion sinking, even dreams shared across space and mind. They laughed, they fought, they learned each other inside and out. And through it all, something bloomed between them, not only trust, but something warmer, something fragile and fierce at once. Then came the betrayal, not by her, not by him, but by those above them, by those who saw what they had become and feared it too much to let it live. He saw the order to erase the program. He saw the explosion. He saw himself shielding her in the final moment, then darkness when the vision ended. Leo stood silent in the chamber. The light around him faded, but the feeling inside him did not. Turned to look at her, her face unchanged, but her posture different. Now more still, more waiting. He stepped toward her slowly, not because he doubted, but because he was careful with what he felt, I remember. She looked at him but said nothing. I remember asking you to bond with me. I remember why I did it, and I remember what we tried to build. Still she waited, not moving, not speaking, just listening. I believed in you and in us. And do you still? She asked finally, voice soft but clear. Leo nodded once. Yes, I do. She stepped forward, then a slow motion full of meaning, and stood just close enough for their hands to meet, and when they did, the bond returned. Not fully, not forced, but gently, like a door that had never truly closed, opening once again. But the moment was broken by a sharp burst of sound, an alert from the outer sensor grid. The display near the wall lit up with enemy signals, drawing closer. Dozens of small ships cloaked in stealth, approaching fast. They found us again, Leo said, already moving toward the exit. We have what we came for, she replied, but they will not let us leave easily. Leo glanced back at the chamber behind them, at the knowledge, at the truth now restored and exposed. He didn't want to leave it behind, but he knew this was only the beginning. Then let's make them chase something they can't. And with that they ran together through the dark steel halls of the forgotten station. Two lives once broken, now fused again. Not by force, not by technology, but by something greater than memory, something that no enemy could erase. The ship tore through the void with speed that bent the surrounding stars into long rivers of light, engines humming low with a rhythm that pulsed like a heartbeat in the silence of space. Inside the cockpit, Leo kept his hands steady on the controls, though his mind swirled with everything he had just seen behind him. The sealed memory data now rested inside a compact crystal cube glowing with quiet energy, and beside him she stood motionless, her eyes locked on the distant path ahead. He could feel it now, not just the bond in theory, not just flickers and dreams, but something stronger, something living inside his thoughts, like a familiar voice humming beneath his own, silent and calm, not pushing, just present, like the soft weight of a memory that never left even when forgotten. And now, as the stars moved around them like silver rivers, he realized what had always felt strange was beginning to feel like home. They moved past the edge of the old satellite belt and into an open drift of dark matter fields where shadows lingered without shape and light bent oddly around nothing. Leo adjusted the stabilizers and watched as a sudden warning ping blinked on the panel. They are still following us, she answered without surprise, her voice level but alert. Then let's lead them somewhere they don't want to go. She nodded and adjusted the ship's course, redirecting toward a system known for its unpredictable gravity wells and magnetic storms. Leo raised an eyebrow as turbulence shook the outer hull. You're guiding us into a trap. Not a trap, she said, only a test to see who really wants this chase. The next few moments passed without words but full of pressure. The ship weaved between dark clouds of space dust, electric arcs dancing like lightning between massive shattered asteroids behind them. The hostile ships began to scatter. Some lost their trail, some turned away, others pressed on, determined to catch what they could not fully understand inside the ship. Leo focused on calming his thoughts, but images kept slipping into his mind from the bond, not forced, not shared on purpose, just echoes of feelings that traveled freely between them. He felt her worry, not fear, just steady concern. He felt her focus, her constant calculation, her silent commitment to protect him. Even now he turned toward her finally, and his voice was softer than before. You stayed with me through all this. You saved me, rebuilt me, risked everything. Because I promised, she replied, and a promise means more than words to me. He looked at her again, not as a machine, not as a stranger, but as something both familiar and mysterious, someone who had walked through fire with him, someone who had fought both their people to hold on to a connection others called impossible. But why did I forget all of it? Because your mind broke to save mine, she said gently. Your last act before the station fell was to protect me from a full psychic burn. Your bond stream collapsed and took your own patterns with it. You gave everything just to make sure I survived. Leo felt something sharp in his chest, not pain, exactly, something heavier, something full of meaning. He didn't remember doing that, But now he understood why he would. He looked down at his hands again. They were still human, still his, but something in them now felt different, not mechanical, but empowered, like they had held something sacred and were holding it again. Then the ship shook hard and red lights flashed across the cockpit. One of the enemy vessels had cut through the field and fired a pulse shot that disrupted their secondary shields. Alarms rang through the cabin as systems flickered and sparks flew from the side panel. Leo moved fast, securing the navigation relay while she took over the rear defenses. Enemy was close now, too close to escape by speed alone. Leo checked the external visuals and saw a sleek black craft bearing no symbol, no flag, only the cold glow of a system designed for destruction. "We can't outrun that one," he said quickly. "Then we don't run," she replied, and for the first time he saw something in her eyes, a flicker, not of calculation, but of emotion. She stood tall and stepped toward the core chamber in the back of the ship, a place Leo had never entered. She opened the hatch with a simple motion, and inside stood a vertical interface lined with light strands, glowing faintly with energy. "This was meant as a last resort," she explained. "It links our minds again, but fully this time. No walls, no breaks, no fragments. You will see everything, and I will carry your thoughts as you carry mine." Leo stared at the device, unsure if it meant salvation or surrender. "What happens after? If we survive, we will not be what we were before. We will be more. And if we don't survive, then at least we'll be whole." Leo stepped into the chamber beside her and placed his hand over the strand interface. A wave of energy passed through his skin, like warmth and sound and memory. All at once, the bond surged forward. Not gently this time, but completely, like a river breaking a dam. He saw everything he had lost: her first smile, her soft laughter, the moments in the learning chambers where they taught each other language and story, the evenings under the twin moons when they sat together without speaking and just watched the stars, the arguments, the silent forgiveness, the ceremony, the vow, the kiss. It was all there, and she saw everything too: the chaos of Earth, the feeling of being too small for his world, the hunger for purpose, the doubt, the loneliness, the way he had looked at her that one quiet night and realized he had already fallen before he knew it. The bond locked, and the ship glowed from the core, outward, not fire, not light, just energy, pure and calm. The approaching vessel fired again, but the shot dissolved into nothing as their fusion pulse expanded outward, bending space around them, warping time just slightly enough to slip through. When the distortion faded, they were far from danger, in open space again. No enemy in sight, no threat on their sensors, only the silence of stars and the hum of shared thought. They stood there, still joined, not just in mind now, but in understanding. Leo looked at her with no confusion. "Know who you are?" And she looked back at him with something like peace. "And I know who you are too." He touched her hand this time without question. And for a long, quiet moment, they simply stood together in the light of their ship, surrounded by stars. No longer strangers, not anymore. The ship moved with grace through the open lanes of unclaimed space stars, passed silently in every direction, like silent witnesses to something ancient, something still unfolding. The bond between Leo and the alien cyborg was now alive again, not like a flickering spark, but a blazing current flowing through both minds, without barrier, without fear. Their thoughts now danced across each other's awareness, not as noise, but as harmony. Within their silence there was no emptiness, only understanding. They needed no words to know what came next. The data from the hidden relay now rested inside their vessel, stored not just in systems but inside them. Both the truth of Project Mirabond, the erased union, the forbidden link between species now existed, once again complete. But their journey was far from over. They knew others would try to stop what they carried. The rogue faction had failed once, but it would try again. Earth Command would question the truth, and her people would hesitate to accept what the Union had produced, no matter how pure the purpose. And yet, despite all of this, they did not turn away from what lay ahead. Leo stood in the center of the command deck, eyes fixed on the incoming signal from the Earth orbital defense grid. The automated system pinged them for clearance and identification, while dozens of unseen weapons aligned. With the edges of the planet below, he could feel the tension in the air. But not in his heart. For the first time in his life, his thoughts were calm. Not empty, just strong beside him. She stood, her presence not towering or intimidating anymore, but balanced, powerful, and still every part of her cyborg body now felt familiar to him, not alien, not strange, just part of the person he had chosen to connect with. He moved toward the communication relay and opened a secure channel broadcasting on a frequency buried beneath decades of encryption, a channel that should have been closed forever. The moment he spoke, there was silence across the system, then confusion, then rapid activity. Signals moved across satellites, people started talking in rooms he could not see, and alerts flared across hidden networks, and yet still no one replied. "They are listening," she said without speaking aloud. Her voice passed through the bond, gentle and sure. "They are not ready to believe, but they cannot look away either." Leo activated the projection, a holographic field that displayed the memory data, the old records. The ceremony, the bond, the betrayal, every moment stored and sealed, now released into public eyes. He transmitted it directly into the Earth Central Archive, bypassing military channels, going straight to civilian stream. There was no undoing it now. "Truth has been given," he said. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full of shifting minds, decisions being made behind screens and closed doors. Then another signal appeared, this one, not from Earth, not from the rogue enemy, but from her people, a high command vessel approaching fast with a request to dock and speak. Immediately she looked at the signal, then at Leo, and he nodded slowly. "Let them come." When the alien vessel arrived, it hovered silently beside their ship, casting long shadows across the stars. A bridge formed between them, a glowing path of light. Leo and the cyborg walked together across it, no longer as fugitives, not as enemies, not even as negotiators, but as living proof that peace had already begun. Inside the vessel, leaders stood waiting, not in armor, but in robes of neutral tone, their expressions unreadable, their thoughts cautious but open. They looked at Leo, first not with suspicion, but curiosity, and then at her with a mix of respect and wonder. "You were declared lost," one of the elders said. "Your mission was closed, your presence erased." "I was not lost," she replied. "My bond was broken, and I chose to repair it in this human. You call him your mate, still?" "Yes, always." The room shifted slightly, not in noise, but in energy. The elder stepped forward and offered a hand in the old way of greeting. Leo reached out and took it without fear. The gesture completed something ancient, a symbol not just of survival but of choice. Later, as both ships moved toward a neutral zone, prepared for formal talks, Leo stood at the window watching the stars move around them, not as a passenger, but as someone who had shaped a different path. Beside him, she joined him, and he turned to her slowly. "You never gave up on me, not once. Because you were never gone, not to me." He touched her arm softly, his hand warm against the cool surface of her skin, now familiar, now his. "What do we do now?" "We live," she said. "We teach. We show them that this bond is not an experiment or a threat, but a bridge, something born not of code but of trust." He nodded, and for a moment they stood without speaking, just breathing, just being. Then Earth Command finally responded, a message of request, not demand, a signal, asking to open dialogue, to review the data, to understand the truth. The change had begun. Rogue factions scattered once their lies unraveled. Their silence grew louder than their threats. And one by one, their alliances collapsed, unable to hold ground against what had already bloomed from the ashes of denial. Leo and the cyborg, now known by both names across both species, became a symbol, not as heroes but as something more personal. A reminder that even across galaxies, even between circuits and flesh, even between silence and sound, the heart remembers what truly matters. They returned to a place once forgotten, a moon where stars rose in pairs, and the air hummed with peace. They stood where they once made their vow long before the bond was broken, and together without words they renewed it. No ceremony, no audience, only the stars above and the memory between them. "I "Remember you now," he said gently, "and I never forgot," she replied there. Fingers touched and the bond flared again, not as a system or a project, not as a mission, but as love pure and quiet and true together. They walked into the soft light of a new day, not alone, not separate, not broken, but whole the end.